the way that we've seen some of the biggest brands enter this space so far have been via an already we'd say established. They've been around for a few months, but still they've blown up, right? So if we talk about Nike through Artifact, Adidas through Bored Ape, Gucci through Super Plastic, which is happening right now. The drop is on the 1st of February. The way that they're entering the space and sort of enhancing their brand, and to your point, essentially making it tangible by almost fractionalizing.
Literally.
Fractional. Look, it's obviously a lot of these companies are publicly traded, so that's where that stock is. But they're essentially putting their brand on the public market.
It means to live life golden. Yeah, we're golden, baby girl, we're golden. They're about to see us shine, 'cause we're golden. They can't ever break us down, 'cause we're golden. They're about to see us glow.
Theo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, mate.
LinkedIn's kind of, you know what? My network's on Instagram. That's kind of where my previous business, that's kind of where I had to exist.
Right.
And I started to do some things on LinkedIn and really started to love it. And that's where we connected. I actually think it's a little bit undervalued at the moment in terms of even just, what we're going to talk about today, the Web3 space and so on. But that's kind of how we got connected. So, pretty grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's way undervalued. There's so much organic reach on there, especially when you're providing value in a selfless way. Even if there's selfish undertones in terms of I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm clearly providing content to get my brand out there, especially from a Web3 perspective. But my Web2 agency, we do a lot of sort of specialized work in the CRM space with Salesforce in particular, and we do a lot of content across as many platforms as we can, but we definitely drive it there. Obviously, B2B, it's the place to be, right?
Yeah,
but,
100%.
I mean, man, people underutilize it big time, and a lot of them who are using it are trying to be transactional and sort of, let's not even go there around how people message each other trying to sell on the first go.
Yeah,
even some of the content is very
Now that I've been a bit more active on there, I've started to get a bit of that.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, it's the same with the NFTs on Instagram. I don't know. That's the worst. You're getting, if the second you post a thing about an NFT, you're probably getting 15
message
requests every day just pushing a project, and I don't even open them anymore. I don't even delete them anymore because I'm just I can't sit here and swipe 20 of these things every day because it just frustrates me.
See, I never went deep enough on my own Instagram to ever have that problem before. I've never. Sorry, that's not true. I never have had enough message requests, legitimate ones before NFTs, to really even. I didn't even know it was there. Until I looked and I started, actually people started engaging with my NFT content on there. And man, I got to tell you, if somebody legitimate is messaging me on there, I'm not going to see it. Because
100%. I wouldn't know anymore. I think Twitter isn't too bad for it, in terms of even just from a connection standpoint, you can definitely.
I love it. I've never had this much fun on Twitter.
It's so good, isn't it?
NFT Twitter is, it is what you make it. You find what you're looking for. If you want skepticism and pessimists and angry people, you're going to get that. You get it everywhere, but there's a lot of community feel. If you connect with the right people, and there's lots of community to gain from there as well. But what I really felt was, I'd already had an extensive network on LinkedIn, and I felt that the organic reach, and I've proven it to be true, the organic reach goes much further. And Twitter's more about, you got to either have a PFP in a particular project or find conversations about things to really grow it. It's a bit more of a grind. But yeah, those
what
two.
I've noticed is you've got to engage in conversation in the comments and really try to I guess draw some attention.
It's like a dinner party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
100%. Awesome. So I'll get you to give a little bit of insight about yourself, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll probably dive straight into the NFT stuff.
Yeah, cool. I won't go back too far, but I started off. Actually, I guess I am going back 20 years. I started off as an entrepreneur in the music space. I really loved the idea of sort of creating my own things, and I'm absolutely obsessed with music and basketball. So I started running my own parties, and then I really liked the idea of standing on a stage and performing. So I pretty quickly got into DJing as well. Yeah, about 20 years ago, and then started some businesses and some music groups and what have you. And I've still got, one group called Polyphonic that we're working on our Forever album that's taken about 10 years because we took the time restrictions off and decided to just make it for ourselves, really. I'm glad we waited because now we can make it an NFT album.
Yeah.
So the timing has worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, fast forward down the road, we sort of got a little bit sick of the Melbourne music scene at one particular time. It was about 9 or 10 years ago. And we're sort of like, let's not do this anymore to pay our bills. Let's find something else to do that'll make cash and just, like I said, work on our music in our own time. So I went and worked with some mates of mine that had a really fast-growing business, and I got pretty involved in that. And along that time, I learnt a lot of, definitely have made a lot of mistakes. Yeah. Learn about, growing businesses, managing people, being an entrepreneur within a business, and then ended up being a head of innovation for them, where we're sort of working out new revenue streams or ways to sort of take the business from a directional point of view. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we jumped in, me and my two business partners, 5-6 years ago, jumped into a business called Out in the Clouds, which is a digital and technology agency. And along that time, I sort of had a few other businesses that I've been involved with, a charity called For Men I co-founded, and I'm one of the directors there as well, where we have our mission to eliminate suicide, especially in young men as they're sort of going through their formative years. They go through a lot of trouble, so that's a passion of mine as well. And then 2017 got into crypto. Yeah. A lot of people started in that pump. That was probably the biggest pump we've had since the most recent one. Yeah. Held through the Great Depression.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I definitely lost a lot, mate. I was moving.
It's like those memes, the like, before crypto and after crypto.
Dude, trust me. Yeah, I was moving from altcoin to altcoin like I was changing my jocks, and it didn't work out for me. But I ended up with the bag that I kept all the way through to what ended up, happening. And obviously, as we all did, put more in a couple of years ago when it went again. And funnily enough, at the start of COVID, I got back into basketball cards.
Oh, crazy.
I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. It actually happened before the real lockdown started. So it was more sort of like actually, I do know why. Gary V.
I was going to say.
That's why.
I was going to say it was probably Gary V.
He's that good that I just forget that he did it to me. That's exactly why. So I started because I used to when I was like, between 5 and 12 used to collect back then, but I got into it pretty heavy and did pretty well from it. And then I started to see Top Shot come up, and I was like, as many people probably.
That was the craze, once we got into that period.
Yeah, but like many people, probably their first impression of anything NFT is like, why when I can access it somewhere else, right click, save conversation, right? And I got over that really quickly once I understand the concept. Like, I'm tech native, right? And coming from a creative background and loving sport and technology, it was a perfect mix. Once it clicked for me and I understood what it was actually about, I never got into Top Shot because I missed that phase before I felt like it was too hyped, so I left it. And then in Feb last year, a mate of mine who's now my business partner in Lucky NFT, he was like, dude, like you've been posting about all this stuff, what are you in? I'm looking at this thing called VV. And VV at the time, they now have IP like Disney and a bunch of crazy stuff. But at the time they had DC and Batman. So I got a fair bit of that. And then that sort of just was the hook. And I got addicted that way, and then sort of made my way through a bunch of different projects. And Mark and I, who is one of my business partners in Lucky NFT, the Lucky Entertainment guys being the other group, we sort of started to have these Friday night wine and NFT sessions where we'd
That's
talk
a vibe.
Yeah, oh man, and we were completely locked down as well, mind you, right? So it was like the only real outlet in the outside world outside of my house. So it was pretty fun. We chopped up heaps of ideas. Most of them died that night. Most of the time I'd wake up the next day forgetting what we'd spoken about because I'd finished like 2 bottles of wine. Luckily he was taking notes.
But it's crazy, you know, like, because I did the same. Like, you know, I like, you know, I don't know if you're a member of Real Vision, but that's Raoul Powell's, his kind of finance platform.
Cool.
And I'm saying, man, like, I just love sitting there, red wine, just watching stuff, you know what I mean, and going down rabbit holes and so on.
Yeah.
You do have to keep it under wraps though, because otherwise you forget so much.
You just go way down.
And you're like, fuck, I want to remember it because I remember it being great. You know,
great
like,
idea.
Yeah.
And then Mark's like, man, like we've got these concepts. We're in this forever. We can get to those. Where I think we can provide value is all of our ideas and talent together. At the time, it was just us two. We should put an agency together. I'm like, man, not more client services. I can't do it. But when I thought about it, the types of solutions and individuals that you'd be talking to is super, super interesting, and you can really sort of control your own destiny. So it came about, you know, through serendipity that I was also talking to Luke and the guys at Lucky Entertainment about what they could do for their NFT projects.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and we've been mates for 20 years, and we've always wanted to sort of do something together. And just, the conversation ended up being, well, stuff it, let's just do it. Let's just do an agency together. And, you know, that was a few months ago, and we've been sort of putting things together ever since.
Yeah. So I want to touch on Lucky as a company, so that gives some context to people as to potentially why the opportunity is actually pretty... It could be amazing there, you know, in terms
Absolutely.
of the potential. And then we'll go back to the technology, you know, because I think there's a tipping point where I think a lot of the reason, we'll go into it, we'll go back to it, but
Absolutely.
Explain a little bit about Lucky and potentially Lucky and so on, Lucky NFT.
Yep. So, boys, if you're listening and I get it wrong, I apologise. But, so look, they've been around for, I'm going to say 10 years. That's probably close to where it was, and Luke was actually managing us, and he started the company around about that time. When I say us, the group Polyphonic, and from there he with his partners have grown an incredible entertainment company across talent representation, festival licensing and events. He now owns Billboard outright. I hope I can say that. And look at a few other things that I'm not across. Record labels they've got, and a couple other things that I'm not quite across. But I saw that as an enormous storage of IP that they can execute on, right? And obviously activations and being able to utilize their talent and the reach of each of their talents communities to be able to, you know, spread the word and roll out projects was just super powerful. Yeah,
especially because they got, obviously NFTs and this kind of world is really pro-creator, right? And I think like that's a, it's a ticking time bomb how long does it take before, everybody's into this stuff, you know what I mean? Because it is so pro the creator as well, and it's a great opportunity for any creator to get involved, or artists and so on. So 100%. I think, it's definitely, but the other part of it is it's quite hard and difficult to conceptualize. You got to understand the space, and I think that's obviously where you come in.
Totally, that's why we're complementing each other in that way. They know their space incredibly well. A few facets, not just music, obviously event execution and the business side of all of that, so they can speak to that as we get those clients through. And then, Mark and I really understand the go-to-market, the strategy, the tech. Mark's a developer originally. So we've got a great makeup of talent within the business to be able to sort of, offer those services. To your point, we're speaking to even larger companies that are just like, we love the idea of this, but where do we start? And how do we do it properly so that it's not detracting from their brand as well?
Because that's the skepticism that would be stopping a lot of the larger companies coming in, right?
Yeah, look, I'd say so. And it's still so new. People fear things they don't know. I think it's a little bit different this time because it's sort of tangible, and also brands, like obviously it's the whole iceberg thing, right? People see on top, but this space has been around for a while now. From a tech perspective, it's forever evolving and will continue to. But I guess what people have seen is March last year, people blown up. August last year, OpenSea breaking records. Pretty big crash, but that's probably beside the point. But the point I'm trying to make is from world headlines to when Nike, Adidas, Gucci, Meta, etc. made their moves was a very short period of time.
Yeah, it was. Which
I'm not sure. I'm happy to be corrected. I'm not sure that's happened before with something emerging. The time period between it sort of hitting, being sort of not mass adopted, but like, hitting headlines to companies, sort of adopting it. I feel like it's moved faster.
Yeah, I think the only time, which I would have no idea about, but might have been obviously back in the dot-com bubble, potentially back then, if we're talking just about the, technology accelerating and everyone kind of going resources from here, we're going here, but I wasn't, I can't really talk to that, but I would imagine it would be similar.
Probably,
But one thing you said before was like, I think one thing about, and Gary Vee says this. Gary Vee says a lot of fucking great things, right? But, I don't know if you've seen his podcast that he did with the Nelk Boys. Like he did it like last week. They're just like they've got a massive podcast called Full Send. But
I haven't seen that episode yet.
It's great. Like it's not something that will blow you away if you understand the tech, but he's
easy to consume.
Yeah, and I think he said something that was really, really good. Was like. And we both experienced this, is once you understand the technology and just the technology, and most people don't understand it, they just see, as you said, the iceberg of like an NFT, and it's like, oh, well, I can right click it, or like, yeah, well, this doesn't make sense. It's like, why would I pay that much for this? And so on. But once you understand the technology and the potentials of the technology, that's the tipping point where you really go, oh, and I know, like everybody I know that has done at least 20 to 30 hours of research into this, sees it.
Gets it,
And it's not just, oh yeah, like that makes sense. It's like, whoa.
Fuck all of that, I'm doing this now.
Right? And everybody I know.
Me too.
And I think that's the kind of thing, you said it before, and Gary Vee says it, is like, cool, like just go do your 20 hours. Go do your 30 hours. And to be honest, like once I seen it, I think I was maybe doing 5 hours a week. Now it's 5 hours a day. You know what I mean? Just because you realize how big the space is and what the potentials are and how it will actually change business forever. Like business models will just absolutely change forever because of what blockchain can do. And I think that's where people definitely, like if you are wondering, like it's not just going to be something where you can flick a switch. You're going to have to come and understand this world.
Totally agree.
So what I want you to do is, can you give us because people that are watching this are this is a part of their 20 hours. You know what I mean? Cool. Some people will understand it, but a lot of people are really intrigued. So, from your perspective, how do you explain an NFT to them? Right? Like or tell us a little bit about what an NFT is, and then obviously we can continue the discussion on it.
Yeah, cool. So, look, I think there's some objective fundamentals that can't really be argued, and then there's some subjective views around what it means to an individual. So nothing I ever say is sort of delivered in the way that I feel that I'm right and there's no other answer, especially in this touchy subject. That's why I'm starting off that way. Okay? I see an NFT as a digital proof of ownership. So it is irrefutable, can't be defrauded in the sense that there is fraudulent activity that can happen in the space. It certainly does. But the fact that you own that particular token cannot be argued because the information is stored on a public ledger on the blockchain. and the proof of that ownership is absolute, and there's no questioning that. On the second layer of that, an NFT is obviously driven by, well, not obviously to everyone, it's driven by a smart contract where the people that are exchanging these NFTs via whatever blockchain it might be on, or sometimes, I don't want to get too technical, but some projects have actually done it via fiat as well, and done a bit of trickery on the back end to sort of do the exchange. But essentially, the deal that they're doing is governed by a smart contract, and that can be firstly, again, it's immutable, so it can't be changed. So the deal that you're making is absolutely in public and cannot be changed, and that can be applied to any form of ownership. It's just if you think about a title or a certificate of authenticity, if you're buying a diamond ring or a signed basketball jersey or whatever it might be, it's just that in a digital format.
I think a lot of people will turn around and say, well, why? Like, what do you mean? Why is ownership important? Like, why? What do you mean? I own stuff already. and I think, but that's totally. Genuinely how you see it. If you don't understand the tech,
totally.
Right. So, do you want to explain a little bit about why it's important to have that ownership? You know what I mean? And what that ownership, from leveraging blockchain technology, what it actually allows an individual to do, and potentially some of the things that we take for granted right now that we think we own that we don't necessarily own, or that it's not transparent.
Yeah, totally. So, there's still a lot to be discovered in terms of utility and what can be done. But imagine, I'm going to paraphrase something from Gary Vee again.
Probably say I hear his name a lot, I reckon.
Good chance. Imagine having the original Woodstock ticket. Whether, you definitely prefer to have been there, certainly, from an experience perspective, but being the first one, that over time, you can have it in your wallet and show provenance that you were there. Or obviously you could buy it over and it will exchange hands. The beautiful thing about it is you can see that publicly. Anyone can, that's happened over time. The more beautiful thing about that, especially for creators, or event runners in this sense, is the creators of Woodstock would continue to be paid every time that ticket stub was passed on each time. So there's a transaction that you can build into what's called the smart contract, where the person who's actually put that up for sale on the blockchain can determine what their commission is every time this asset is transacted. And that is the most beautiful thing from a creator's perspective.
Yeah, and the reason that's so beautiful is because we don't currently have that. The creators of Pokemon, as an example, every time a card sold or a group of cards, they're not seeing that value. Right, they're already massive, right? But they're not seeing that value.
Flips the model on its head completely.
Yeah.
Especially for recording artists, the deals that they're getting for the most part. Sometimes it's justified because of the platform that they're given, but now a lot of them are already building their community before they're even going to a label. So why give away all that money when that was the reason historically that you'd give away everything essentially for an advance? Where now you can do an NFT drop, get the same money, maybe more that you'd get for that advance, keep 80% instead of giving away 80%, and then give your fans, your early adopters, a percentage of your success, and they can benefit from it ongoing.
Yeah, it's magical once you start to understand, and that's like what you said before around the utility of it. Like we probably discovered if we're lucky, 5 to 10% of what the utility could potentially be.
Yeah, I don't think we're even close to that.
Yeah, 100%. But again, kind of reiterating that point of that ownership and some of the, you mentioned, but it's even things such as small as ticketing, the example of what that could change. Even you think about like, you know, maybe something like AFL games, right? Like how many tickets to like grand finals every year do you think, or how much fraud goes on within that, you know? So things such as ticketing, an example is like, that data is stored. You own that ticket once it's transferred into your ownership, and you know that can't be copied just by having like a photocopier or a carbon copy or something like that. You know what I mean? So
it's also a brand new form of expression as well.
Yeah,
being able to, sort of show what you're about based on the contents of your wallet. You know, you can talk about, oh man, how good was it when Hawthorn smashed Sydney that year? We essentially won by halftime. That's a real thing, by the way. That was a great year. And sort of connecting with people by doing that. It's and obviously, I'm wearing Jordans here. Being able to express yourself as a form of fashion. I mean, look at that's what Bored Ape has done essentially. They've built the first. Definitely the most desirable brand on Web3.
Because so a lot of people still look at that and don't understand it, right? So because even just from a business perspective, like building a brand, because brands aren't tangible, right? And I think that's what a lot of people like don't necessarily understand, right? Yeah. Like, and you could even say Web3 can somewhat make it tangible. It can create some type of monetary value or something quantifiable on a brand, which is previously really hard to do. Like,
totally.
Like Nike, like we're probably going to see what Nike's brand's worth, hopefully in the next 10 years or 5 years pretty soon. And I think, like, how do you describe, because, Bored Ape Yacht Club and their brand and what they're doing, and how someone can start to understand that, and how blockchain actually starts to play a role in that?
Yeah, totally. So, look, I think that the way that, again, like with the other points that we were talking about, it will continue to evolve. The way that we've seen some of the biggest brands enter this space so far have been via an already established. They've been around for a few months, but still they've blown up, right? So if we talk about Nike through Artifact, Adidas through Bored Ape, Gucci through Super Plastic, which is happening right now. The drop is on the 1st of February, which I'm very happy about. And I'm sure there's other ones that I'm missing. The way that they're entering the space and sort of enhancing their brand, and to your point, essentially making it tangible by almost fractionalizing.
Literally.
Fractional. Look, it's obviously a lot of these companies are publicly traded, so that's where that stock is. But they're essentially putting their brand on the public market. If you think about it that way.
100%. I think like one of the big things that I look at is like, I was trying to explain this to someone the other day. I was doing some stories and said that, a lot of people come into the NFT space thinking it's an altcoin. We're just trying to flip NFTs. And I'm like, yeah, like there's to be honest, that's a full-time job. Yeah. Good luck. If you're going to go do that, you better be spending 40 to 50 hours a week on it.
At least, yeah.
At least. But I think a lot of people don't understand utility and how there is going to be, and what kind of utility you can have access to. Like I was trying to explain to someone the other day that, I'm involved in a project that's not been built yet, and I paid an upfront fee to be a part and have a say in that build. And really the reason I was like, why would I give you upfront money for something that hasn't been built yet? It's because there's a great network there. Like there's a community of people there that I really want to be a part of. One, because that's how I express myself, like just like there's...
By association.
Yeah, just like wearing Nike, just like, wearing Adidas or whatever it is. It's like I wear that because I associate with the meaning behind that brand, or I want to express myself in that way. It's the same, like this is a network of people that I want to say that I'm like, I want and that's a thing. That's how we are as humans. But there's also great utility in what I can learn from being in that community. And and then there's great access. And, you know, that smart contract that you were talking about before almost grants that access and gives you access to the different utilities, right? And I think that's really great, where we're seeing potentially creators come on board, you know, like Gary V. You know, I think, yeah, I don't know, you know, just the way he's kind of thinking about it and the different levels of access you can get to him. Like, you know, there's an example, the Podcast Panther. I've got my eyes on it, right? Because what it means is I get to have Gary V on my podcast once a year.
Love it.
You know, but, you know, shout out to everyone who's in our community and listens. Like, that's one thing that I want to propose to our community as a goal. Can we get there as a community where we get access to Gary V on the podcast once a year? And that's something that's tied into one of his NFTs called the Podcast Panther, which is a version of that smart contract.
Yep.
So how you can tie different utility to different, and because it is unique, and that's what, you know, NFTs are, they're unique.
Non-fungible.
Yeah, non-fungible. So I think that's not, that people who look at it, they're like, oh, it's just artwork.
Yeah.
You know, or it's just this, and it's like, well, no, that's like the first iteration, the very first iteration of what we got here.
Totally.
But what, you know, like, you know, I actually have taken a step back from NFTs now and just looking at ones that, of communities that I want to be a part of, just because I just don't have the time to actually go in and say, well, I'm not
staying on top of it.
Yeah, I just don't have that at the moment. So I'm like more like now, well, which ones do I want to join? Well, I want to be a part of eFriends because I want that network. I want to be a part of, you know, Real Vision are doing one that I want to be a part of, you know, like, and so on, and starting to look a bit deeper. But I think people really struggle to see that there is great utility behind this, and how the technology of blockchain actually creates that utility.
I think you've sort of struck on something there that's important. The reason, well, I'll finish my statement and then I'll correct myself.
Yeah.
I was going to say the reason why you're drawn to those communities is because of the jockey that's actually driving that that project, right? Because you know that they would cultivate a great community. But that can also happen from unknowns. It still comes back to, you know, do you know who's behind the project? Do they have a track record, or do you have a sense of who they are?
It's like investing in stocks, right?
It's exactly. Well, it's I feel like it's like an angel investing. I feel like there's a lot of similarities. So I actually literally did a video on LinkedIn this morning that I mentioned this exact piece where there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying a one of one piece of art, knowing that you're buying a one of one piece of art and that's what you're doing. Great. Get an amazing, they've got like 50-inch screens now that are vertical. I had to work out which way was horizontal, which way was vertical, that are as thin as an iPhone, and they're created to display NFTs. Do that. That's awesome. You're just going back to what we said, supporting artists. You get a piece that you love. You might want to get the IRL, the in real life version. I'm using NFT acronyms. The in real life version as well. If they've painted it on canvas, they may not have. But the fact of the matter is, know what you're buying, and it's okay if you're actually buying, you know, into that artist, because don't forget, if they blow up and you've bought like a Genesis piece or even just something early, you're going to benefit from it. And the bonus is that you love the art. It's pretty similar as you sort of go down the path. Not all of them have focused on art. Like there's a couple of community tokens that I've got that have quite blatantly mailed in the art or the graphic. You're not getting it because of that. You're getting it because of the access and the community or potential community that you're going to get. But certainly, you know, there's a big oversight where people are sort of not, like, again, if we segment out the art only, most of the time they're very upfront about, I'm an artist, this is my art, you're buying it, it's a limited piece or whatever, zero utility other than you get to use it and look at it, it's yours. Awesome. The other piece of it is people are overlooking the fact that they're actually investing in a business. That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
When it's not just art and there's promised utility, there's a roadmap, that's their pitch deck. That's their IM, right? There's direct relationships between what you do when you're doing DD potentially investing in a business versus when you're planning on investing in to an NFT project. Yes, the money of one can sometimes be more than NFT, sometimes not, depending on how crazy you go on the NFT. But certainly, I think people are missing the fact that there's significant fundamentals that are going into the projects that are by design a long-term project.
It's so true. Like, I think back to companies, you know, like WeWork. You know what I mean? Like a prime example of, I'll create a correlation here. So I invested in a project. There was probably a time about 9 months ago where I was like, okay, I really want to get some good skin in the game here. You know what I mean? Like, invest in some projects and go, you know, just really research for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, ended up being about 2 months, and just go, cool, I want to invest some money here, and I'm going to spend a lot of time doing this just to learn. And it's funny, like, you know, had I probably had looked at it like that, which I didn't at the time, I probably would have seen some of these. I probably wouldn't have been able to see, okay, well, this project's, you know, going to be really successful. And one of them, I'll give you an example, was like, these guys went into the community, and the community was like, it was big, it was huge, right? And a lot of engagement going on. And I thought, oh, this is a great sign. You know what I mean? And as soon as the project launched, the reveal happened, it went to shit. You know, and that was a really good thing for me because I learned a lot during that process. And then I started to think, like, you know, and I made that correlation. This is like investing in a company. I need to know who the leaders are. I need to, you know, because like WeWork, he's a prime example, you know. Adam, I can't pronounce his last name, you know, but the fundamentals of that company were horrible, but he's a great marketer. You know, and I kind of thought back to that, and then that's when I started to change my tune a bit and slow down, and how I picked the projects that I wanted to invest in and so on. And it's funny that in that period of time, there's one project that's actually done quite well. You know, I don't know if you've seen the Galaxy Eggs and the Galaxy Warriors and so on, but
no,
the fundamentals, I look back and the fundamentals of that project were great. You know, like it's held its value over time. The community was genuinely there for the artwork.
Okay.
And it was I guess the attitude of the community was quite different. So, and then, you know, I started to look into the leadership, figured out, originally I looked into the leadership, but then I realized later on they had been creating their artwork for 4 years.
Right.
So it was it wasn't just like, oh, we're jumping in and thinking. It was like, these guys have been doing this for 4 years and putting a lot of effort in. But it's just an example of, like, you know, what you said before about treating it like you're investing in a company. Like, if you're just, you know, if how you invest in a company is like, oh, like, you know, just jump on a bandwagon because everyone else is doing it, you're probably going to get burned. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we've all been there. Yeah, you know what I mean? But if you kind of can look at the fundamentals, who's the leader? You know, what is that roadmap? You know, do they have a proven track record of being able to execute?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, like I think that's why Gary Vee, you know, you kind of look at his project and, okay, who's the leader? What's their proven track record? What's the vision? You know, and you kind of start to look.
Do you think they can execute? Yeah,
100%. So I think it makes a lot of sense what you were saying, which is cool. How are you seeing the space then? Like, how are you seeing the NFT space actually evolving? You know, like the first iteration was art. Obviously, you're in a project now that is I think could potentially be I think it's going to be the next one. I think events and music and so on is going to be massive this year. But how are you seeing the space actually evolving?
Yeah, look, I think you know, based on what we've seen, let's just say in the last 12 months, I think that there's a massive. Well, there's two ways to look at this. The reason I'm laughing is I'm thinking about how many projects have promised a game and how many projects have promised to buy land in the metaverse and develop it. They're not going to. Most of them are not going to be able to do that. Goes back to, you know, making sure you pick the right team who can actually execute. But definitely, whether it's play to earn or just play full stop and building out games, there's definitely a lot of that activity and some incredible players that are building those out and even, you know, partnering with incredible game developers.
That for me is I like Axie. For me, is like one of the best business models I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like when I felt like actually got put onto it by some of our Filipino staff members.
Okay.
Because it's massive over there.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, fuck, like the actual business model behind this is wild.
Yeah, it's nuts. So
Nuts.
yeah, there's a bunch of stuff coming, whether it's this year or next. They're definitely working on it. I mean, the Bored Ape game, as you know, who knows at what level it's going to be in its infancy, but obviously all games evolve, right? So I'm interested to see what happens there. To your point, music NFTs are going to be huge. What Blau's doing is amazing.
Yeah.
There's going to be so much more of that. And I mentioned it earlier around, early adopters of artists are being able to actually buy into their career, right?
Can we touch on that for a second, right?
Yeah.
So like, because I think that'll really. I feel like music. It actually is one of the things that starts to really make sense once you understand it. Like music, if anything, is probably and art. I feel like a lot of the industries that have probably been.
Middleman has won the entire time.
Yeah. But so how does can we try to create like maybe an example like if let's use Drake.
Okay.
Right. So but let's use Drake. At the start of his career.
Okay, cool.
Right. So how does Drake at the start of his career leverage blockchain, NFTs, and because there's obviously a funding part, that could potentially come into it early on, and maybe we look at start of career, middle career, end of career, because I feel like that could help people. Really
totally
start to understand.
So if we use that as a use case, knowing how successful he's been over time. Look, social wasn't really around when he started, or at least it wasn't really that big, but let's say it was, or wherever he had built his community at that point. Like I've mentioned before, the main reason, at least traditionally, I can't speak for every recording artist, but the main reason you go to, especially a major label, is the platform they put you on and the immediate exposure you can, the machine can provide you and immediate success.
Mm-hmm.
So if he wanted to go down the Chance the Rapper path of fully independent, and that's probably the comp that might be better suited because of the fact that he has gone fully independent the whole time. But if let's just stick with the Drake example.
Yeah.
If he had gone with an NFT to start with, he could have said, I'm releasing my initial album as an NFT. Anyone that purchases it gets perpetual rights across the master and the publishing of a certain percentage in total, and then obviously from that point, you owning that, not only do you profit in the success from a revenue perspective, you can trade that token, whether it's got art behind it or not at this point is irrelevant. The value behind it, the ability to then trade a finite amount of stock in somebody's career is incredible, not only for the person that's made that early bet on Drake, but for Drake forever, not only giving him the enough upfront money to start with, but then the success that his first album made, the revenue that would have gone straight to him instead of ultimately what might have been 10% of everything that was made might have ended up with him personally. And think about how much money the guy's got, right? How much more you would have made.
I know.
He can then forever airdrop tickets to holders in particular regions because he's, airdrop, you could go into his website like Gift Goats with VFriends and register your address so he can mail stuff out to you. Damien Hirst actually did a collab with Drake. He did an art piece, airdropped it to all of his holders for free. That piece, that secondary piece is now worth over 10,000 Aussie. You got it for free because you were holding that piece of art. So you'd be able to then do that as Drake continues through his career. He could then, add whatever additional utility. Can't take away because it's immutable. You can't go back on the contract, but can continue to add value to the holders of, ultimately people who believe in him forever.
Yeah. So let's say Drake was, let's just imaginative, you know, for now. But like Drake hadn't released an album yet, but you know, he had the intentions of, and he released an NFT and said, you know, like example of what you said before. But he kind of will raise some money, you know, to create that first album. You know, and
crowdfunding.
Literally crowdfunding, and then because you hold that NFT, whatever, you know, a percent of that album of what's made from, if that was a part of the utility on the smart contract, could be paid to you, you know, directly. But then there's also a value to that actual contract in itself that could go up, obviously, as Drake gets more and more famous and obviously more and more proven and so on. But Drake can also say, like what you mentioned before, where like he can come back and say, well, yeah, I'm going to add this in on top, but nothing can be taken away. So, you know,
right, doing a private concert in the metaverse for anyone that's a token holder.
Yeah, 100%. And even maybe, you know, it's probably more likely to be digital, but even he could do the same thing with live. You know, like whatever he wanted, right? And I think that's the thing that is quite crazy here. And as you said, is super beneficial for creators in that stance. So
yeah, the potential of infinite value that you can provide. You know, that and then that scenario.
And it's a reward though, isn't it? It's a reward for your fans. It's a direct relationship with your fans to say thank you, which
that's how you build
the only
community.
way you got it at the moment is through social media, and you know, they don't have control. Like
Correct.
The creator doesn't have control over that.
This will end up being the new social media. There'll be some way of, you know, well, it's already there. You can already express yourself, like I said, by, you know, your wallet is really now your social media page. If you think about MySpace, like your top friends, your top items on your wallet, and there's actually now Chrome extensions for Twitter where you can show and curate an NFT tab on your Twitter profile.
Yeah, I actually did see that.
It's called name tag. It's awesome. Yeah, I've got one. And then you can also, your PFP is actually verified through via name tag. I know Twitter's doing that natively, which name tag's probably a little bit worried about, but yeah, ultimately that's where it's going to go. You know, Web3 verified assets as an extension of your social presence. Imagine having, you know, the bragging rights and the benefits monetarily and experience-wise of owning part of Drake's first album. It's incredible.
Oh, crazy. And it's, yeah, I think about that a lot and just think about, like, you know, one of the one that comes to mind for me, and I don't know the ins and outs of the deal, but like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know the
Spotify deal.
Yeah, like, but I would assume, did he sign the rights over? To like, so like, would he be able to actually get into the space now, or?
I don't know what he signed. It might have just been exclusive streaming through Spotify. I'm not sure. I don't know what that deal looks like, but
that's an example though, right? Like totally. That's for me, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like, oh man, like Joe Rogan. Like,
yeah, how much freedom does he have?
And, you know,
now?
like people look, he still made 100 million, you know, but it's like.
But he could be doing that every year through an NFT.
100%. Yeah. Like, and I think that's the, once you wrap your head around that, you go, wow. Like, and imagine that technology was there at the start. You know, like it's powerful now, but imagine Joe had it at the start.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is crazy. So then how does, like, so for the listeners at home, like, how do they start to spot a good project? Like, if there's someone who says, look, I've got that 20 hours or I've got that 30 hours and I'm willing to actually put in here, how do they start to look at it, do you think?
Yeah, look, there's sort of great publications, lots of spaces where you can sort of get in the rabbit hole of information. My position on this is start with somewhere you trust. So whether you follow someone that you trust, whether you know someone in your network that you trust, whether you read something regularly that you trust, go there. I learnt on 1:37 p.m. Because that was just the timing. They started doing content when I sort of started to get onboarded around this time last year. And really, you know, obviously, you know, with anything, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of good information available online. But it's really find somewhere where you consume the information and you enjoy it. Don't make it laborious, you know. There's plenty of places that deliver it in a really nice way. Hopefully this podcast is one of them. Nice packaged way where you can understand and you walk away and go, yeah, fuck, actually, I get that. I understand what you're talking about. I want to find out more, you know?
100%. I think you've also got to, like, you've got to kind of get into the weeds as well. Like you've kind of, because I think you've got to figure out what your stance is as well.
Totally.
I think that's important. Like, and you're only going to do that by seeing other opinions and starting to go, well, yeah, I kind of, and you've got to also try to find, like what you mentioned, like really information that's sound. What are the facts here? And then what's the noise? And start to understand the facts and then build an opinion based on what you can see in the space. Like, you know, we're seeing some crazy stuff at the moment with Dorsey and his kind of stance on Web3 and like there's a lot of different opinions. And then I don't know if you follow Scott Galloway, but on Twitter, but you know, he's a professor and he's like, yeah, the metaverse is a head fake. He's like, it's all a head fake. And kind of like, you know, so there's so many opinions, but I think they're all important, you know, because like you can start to get a gauge of what your belief system is. And that's a big part of, there are the facts. But then a lot of what will drive your intrigue here is to actually figure out what your stance is and actually start to immerse yourself into this universe.
100%. And especially, like, obviously we can talk about investors, creators, businesses and how they enter. There's obviously different approaches for each. But if we talk about just the investor/collector, you want to, not that anyone ever wants anything to go to zero, but you want to be that, you know, involved or you know, be in a project that talks to you and you connect with, so that if you are left holding the bag, at least you've got something nice that you enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, it can, and the beautiful thing about blockchain, it can get revived, and projects have. We've already seen this whole craze of people looking for 2018, 2017 projects, and somebody with a bit of clout discovers it and it takes off, and next thing you know, there's 5,000 ETH that's been done in it in a day.
Crazy. And I think that's true. Like that's kind of what I was trying to pit. Like I feel like if you're not into it now and you haven't done that research, a lot of people just look at it as, how do I make money in this thing, right? And I think it's not a great mindset to kind of to come into this world with, you know, because there's so much more than that there. And I was trying to explain, is someone's like, well, why would you invest money in it if you're not going to get a return? I'm like, well, you know, what is a return? And
how quickly do you need it?
Exactly.
Well, actually, further to that, if you do need it, then you've invested too much.
Yeah.
That's the most hypocritical thing I've ever said, because I definitely invested too much. Luckily, it's worked out the right way and not the wrong way. But definitely, I wouldn't. Well, I'd probably do it again. I'm a big risk guy, but I definitely wouldn't. I believe in my ability to be able to make money running businesses.
But you've done the work, right? You've also done the work, and I think that's important too.
Look, I've definitely done my homework. Probably my wife would say too much, but but it's certainly, you know, it's a space where it either clicks with you or it doesn't. If you, to your point, if you're in it for the quick cash, you might get lucky. You might get stuck in, you know, especially again if you're over leveraged. What happened last September? Some projects went down 90%. People don't talk about that enough. A lot of good projects went down 90%. BeFriends went down 80%, 75%. Why aren't we talking about that? Like, people that are in a hurry would have lost a lot of money because they would have cashed out because they thought that it was going to double, but it actually dropped. And they're like, fuck, I need the money now because I used everything to my
100%. It's the same with Bitcoin, right? Like,
correct.
You know, like
credit cards.
Anyone who got into Bitcoin in the last 2 months is probably in a world of pain right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you were to zoom out and you know, look over the last 10 years or even just the last 5 or so on, it's like, it's got a good track record. Its fundamentals are there. And, you know, it's very hard at times. Like, I remember sitting, you know, it can get tough, you know, in there for a while. But as again, if you're over leveraged, it's even tougher. Yeah. You know what I mean? And if you're not leveraged, but if you've invested too much, it can be really, really tough. Can we just, so what does it look like inside of an NFT community? Because I feel like that's something that might intrigue people as well. Like, because you can get involved in projects, and I know from my experience getting into an NFT community, like there are potential ways to actually to get buy-in without necessarily spending money and so on. And there's different roles that exist and so on. And it's almost like a business in a sense, but it's a weird vibe. It's not like it's a community. I kind of talked about this, but I think it's almost like the community becomes the staff members in a way
100%.
at some point.
If they're lucky enough.
Yeah,
if the project's lucky enough, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, first thing I'll say is go in eyes wide open. You'll get it. I mean, I can't really talk about anyone else, but I guess what I can say is the general consensus around the conversations I've had with people is it's quite easy to get the feel of a room, especially in a Discord server, whether it's like way too bro culture or it's all about the money versus people legitimately trying to make connections and people going out of their way to help people. Like I've seen people give people thousands of dollars because they got ripped off. Like just here's 2 ETH. Like it's crazy. The type of things that have sort of happened, and like people talking about like real world problems, and then like the next thing they know, they've shared this photo of someone sending them a gift to make them feel better, and it's just like, you know, you can see it's all really easy to see whether there's a lot of and it's weird because it's all text, so it's well, there are images sometimes, but there's no audio for the most part, so you can still feel the tone. It is
weird
really
like that, and that's what I mean. Like, I definitely, like, there was a few projects that I was involved in, and it was all about the money, and you can get that, that vibe really quickly, and the beautiful thing about Discord is you can enter and leave. Yeah, like you can choose on who's on your sidebar. You know what I mean, and what communities you want to be a part of, and
like going to a stage at a festival, I guess.
It literally is.
Similar.
It literally is. And then some of the the communication and the mode of communication and the way it's happening and the vibe that you get is you know, as I said, there's a few projects I'm involved now, and I literally go to the Discord to learn, and I go to the Discord to have kind of some of these conversations, and I think that's something that, again, like that's probably some advice that I would give is like, you know, if you're going to get involved in a project, the best way for you to do that is to join their Discord and to actually see what's happening there, you know, and what the vibe is. Are these people invested in the project, or are they just invested in the return that they might get?
Do your questions get answered when you post them there, or do people just wait until there's an announcement where they can make money and then they start talking? You know, you can really get a feel of what's legitimate versus what's completely manufactured or just 100% price driven.
100%. Awesome. So the last part of the podcast is actually a quick fire section. So it's some questions. We don't put there's no time span on when you need to answer or anything like that, but it's just some questions that we ask that, you know, give tons of value in a short period of time and different answers. So the first question is, what's the project that you're most bullish on right now and why?
Crypto Jankies by Superplastic by far. They're second, so that they're essentially toy creators, like collectible creators. They've done things for like the Gorillas, the band. They've done heaps of brand collabs with a lot of huge brands. They've just released episode 2 of their story, so it's like a story full of episodes in terms of the drops that they do. They've got the Gucci collab we spoke about before. That's Feb 1st. They've got a Bored Ape Yacht Club collab where they're creating a toy where I actually think there's going to be something in the toy that you can verify ownership. We're speculating a little bit, obviously, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. And as long as you own one of these Crypto Jankies, you can get into Superplastic's secret store where you can buy these Gucci releases, these Bored Ape releases, etc. And they're giving away a Ferrari later in the year for holders as well. That's just like...
That's just an example.
Yeah, from what they've said, like 15-20% of what they're doing. They're also investing in physical stores, restaurants where the token will give you access to, and they're also planning on releasing a film in the future as well. So there's shitloads of utility partnerships airdrops, you name it, they're sort of ticking all the boxes. It's definitely a ship that's being run by creatives because there's not a boatload of culture. There's heaps of culture. There's not a boatload of structure, which can annoy some people in the Discord for sure. It annoys me sometimes. I'm really structure driven. But what I know for sure is that company is extremely established. They're very particular about their brand, and they would not be doing this half-assed. And they've already started to. It's gone up. I mean, from mint, it's gone up 200%. But sorry, 200x. But from Christmas, it's gone up. I'd have to do my math.
That's all right.
It's gone up almost 100x.
Crazy. It's nuts. And and I think there's some lessons in there, right? Like it's like that's how you can spot. You can start to look like, through partnerships and who's involved and some of the things.
Yeah, how long have they been doing it for? The price did nothing for 5 months, 6 months, but they launched in July. 5 months, it did nothing. Yeah, it's incredible. What they're doing is incredible. Look, anything else?
That's just a prime example of like what's actually possible here.
Yeah, how do you can load it up, right? They're not cutting any corners. They're going for it from a partnership perspective, and they reckon, like I said, they got plenty more. Anything Gary V does in this space, he's knocking out of the park. I could do an episode just on that. Look, I love Deadheads because of like what they're doing from an animator's perspective and all the rest of it. But outside of that, there's a couple of projects that I'm in that I'm not going to really talk about because I'm still unsure about them.
Yeah, 100%.
But certainly those three are for sure doing it the right way.
Yeah, 100%.
That wasn't very quick fire.
That's all right. That's fine. That's fine. It's value, right? Okay. One piece of advice for someone who's looking to invest in an NFT.
Go slow. Do not FOMO. Do your research. Everything that we spoke about today, take it all in.
And I want to, I guess, one piece of advice for your younger self as it relates to this space. So because I want to relate it to this. That's a question we ask a lot of people, but like one piece of advice for yourself, as it relates to, Web3 blockchain, say maybe just getting started and invested into it. Let's say maybe 3-4 years ago.
See, you should have saved more money. You could have made bigger moves earlier. Told you so.
So what do you mean by that? So
I'm terrible at saving money. I love holidays. I love experiences. I love wine. Love going out. Just didn't save enough money.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. Okay. So because and there is like a little bit of truth to that, right? Like in terms of how we talk about opportunities.
You got to be liquid to make moves. I wasn't very liquid. Luckily, like I said in my story, I'd started with very little money into basketball cards. They happened just to go off at that time. Plus, I'd had the crypto from 2017, so that was the only money that I had saved. Put it into this, and it just happened to work. Thank God.
Yeah, I think there's a mixture there, right? It's like you're definitely right. Like it's being liquid allows you to make more moves, but I also think there's another side to it as well. Like there's a work side of it as well. You create opportunities by the work that you do.
Oh, totally.
100%.
Totally.
Awesome. All right, man. I want to say a massive thank you for coming on the show. I think it's definitely been one of the most requested themes in terms of NFTs at the moment. A lot of people are asking a lot of questions and very interested from our listeners. And I think we did a great job today of just giving them some insight on how they can get started and start to understand it. So I want to say a massive thanks. Obviously, you gave us your time today, and you've got a lot going on. So where can people find you and obviously watch a lot more of your content, understand what you do, and keep an eye on the projects that you're involved in?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on. I hope we articulated the points well and people understood them, and we didn't go we made it consumable. I really hope that happened. If there are more questions to your point, or people want to challenge me or ask me more questions, I'm completely open. Like I said, I don't think that what I say is 100% the only way to go about it. So most platforms I'm on there as the raw founder. LinkedIn I'm on there as my name. So probably put that up as part of the episode, right?
Yeah,
So
100%.
hit me up. I'm super responsive. As soon as I have time, I make sure that I get back to everyone. As long as you're not trying to sell me something in LinkedIn via private message.
As long as you're not an NFT project promoter and you're not coming in and sliding into the DMs.
Yeah, dude.
Nah, thanks heaps. To everyone who listened, I really hope you got a lot out of it. It's such an exciting space at the moment. Be wary, I think, be careful, but get involved because I think, the technology itself is going to change the world. It already is. So,
no doubt.
thanks to you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.